Most people think understanding comes from having a powerful brain. I never believed that. The difference between knowing something and truly understanding it is much larger than you imagine. That gap changes everything. In this video, I'll show you the simple learning system that allowed me to see what others missed, and why it can completely change the way you learn anything. Most people believe that understanding is something that happens to a lucky few. They imagine that somewhere in the world there are people born with extraordinary minds, and the rest of us simply try to keep up. It is a comforting story, because it gives us an excuse. If understanding belongs only to geniuses, then confusion is not our fault. But I don't think that's true at all. I think the biggest difference between people who understand things deeply and people who don't is not intelligence. It is not memory. It is not even education. The difference is the way they approach not knowing. Think about how most people learn. They open a book, they read a chapter, they memorize a few definitions, they repeat some terminology. Soon they can use the correct words, and because the words sound sophisticated, they begin to feel that they understand the subject. But there is a strange thing about knowledge. The moment you ask someone to explain an idea in simple language, all the fancy vocabulary disappears. Suddenly the structure collapses. The person realizes that what looked like understanding was often just familiarity. There is a tremendous difference between recognizing information and truly possessing it. Imagine you meet a person at a party. You see their face once. A week later, you see them again and recognize them. That is recognition. Now imagine that person is your closest friend. You know their habits, their thoughts, their personality, their history. That is understanding. Many people treat ideas the way they treat strangers at a party. They recognize them. They do not know them. The first secret of learning is brutally simple. Never confuse the name of something with the thing itself. Suppose someone asks, why does a magnet attract metal? You answer, because of electromagnetic forces. Now that sounds impressive. It sounds scientific. But if the next question is, what are electromagnetic forces? And your answer becomes another complicated phrase, have you actually explained anything? You see, giving something a label is not the same as understanding it. Children often ask questions that adults find annoying because they continue digging beneath the labels. Adults stop when they hear a sophisticated word. Children keep asking why, and why, and why again. The child is not interested in terminology. The child wants reality. That curiosity is one of the most powerful learning tools ever invented. The second secret is to make everything simple enough that you can explain it clearly. Many people are afraid of simplicity because they think complexity is a sign of intelligence. It isn't. If you truly understand an idea, you should be able to explain it in plain language. Imagine trying to explain gravity to a 12-year-old. You cannot hide behind technical jargon. You must find the essence of the idea. That process is uncomfortable because it exposes every gap in your understanding. The places where your explanation becomes fuzzy are exactly the places where your knowledge becomes fuzzy, and that is valuable. Most people run away from discovering what they don't know. The best learners hunt for it. They treat confusion the way explorers treat treasure maps. Every point of confusion marks an opportunity to understand something more deeply. Think about that for a moment. Most people experience confusion and conclude that they are not smart enough. The best learners experience confusion and conclude that they have found the next thing to investigate. The same event produces opposite reactions. One person sees a wall, the other sees a doorway. The third secret is to actively test your understanding. Knowledge feels solid inside your head because there is no resistance. Everything seems clear until you try to use it. That is why explaining ideas aloud is so powerful. The moment you attempt to teach something, reality gives you feedback. Suddenly you notice missing pieces. You notice assumptions. You notice weak explanations. And those weaknesses are gifts. They tell you exactly where to improve. Learning is not about protecting your ego. It is about exposing your ignorance as efficiently as possible. That may sound strange, but ignorance is not the enemy. Hidden ignorance is the enemy. When you know what you don't know, progress becomes possible. When you don't know what you don't know, progress becomes difficult. There is another mistake many people make. They believe learning happens when information enters the mind. Actually, learning happens when ideas connect. Facts by themselves are not very useful. A fact is like a brick. 1,000 bricks scattered across a field do not create a house. Understanding comes from seeing relationships. Why does this fact matter? How does it connect to another fact? What principle ties them together? The deeper the connections, the stronger the understanding. This is why genuine curiosity is so powerful. Curiosity naturally searches for connections. Memorization collects pieces. Curiosity assembles them. And assembled knowledge is much harder to forget. Think about riding a bicycle. You could memorize every equation related to balance and motion. You could study pages of technical information. Yet none of that guarantees you can ride. At some point, understanding must become experience. You must interact with reality. The same principle applies to nearly every field. If you want to understand economics, examine real markets. If you want to understand psychology, observe real people. If you want to understand communication, communicate. Reality is always the final test. Many people spend years collecting information while avoiding reality. But reality is where understanding lives. Another powerful habit is questioning assumptions. Human beings are natural pattern makers. We inherit beliefs from parents, teachers, friends, books, and culture. Most of those beliefs enter our minds without inspection. We accept them because everyone else accepts them. But progress often begins with a simple question. How do we know this is true? Not because we are rebellious, not because we enjoy arguing, but because truth matters more than comfort. The world does not reward confidence. Reality rewards accuracy. You can be absolutely certain and completely wrong. Nature does not care how strongly you believe something. Nature only cares whether it is true. That attitude transforms learning. Instead of defending beliefs, you investigate them. Instead of protecting conclusions, you test them. Instead of fearing mistakes, you use them. Mistakes are among the most valuable teachers available. Every error contains information. When an experiment fails, something has been learned. When a prediction turns out wrong, something has been learned. When an explanation breaks apart, something has been learned. The mistake itself is not the problem. Refusing to examine it is the problem. Many people spend enormous energy trying to appear knowledgeable. The best learners spend enormous energy becoming knowledgeable. Those are not the same thing. One is performance. The other is discovery. And discovery requires humility. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. Humility is recognizing that reality is larger than your current understanding. That recognition keeps the mind open. The moment you believe you already know enough, learning slows down. The moment you admit there is more to discover, learning accelerates. Consider how science advances. Scientists are not rewarded for proving themselves right. They are rewarded for finding what is true. Sometimes that means discovering they were wrong. In fact, some of the greatest breakthroughs in history began with unexpected results. Reality disagreed with expectations. Instead of ignoring the disagreement, someone investigated it, and understanding expanded. You can apply the same principle to everyday life. Treat your assumptions as hypotheses. Test them, challenge them, refine them. Allow evidence to guide you. Another essential idea is that knowledge should remain flexible. Many people turn beliefs into possessions. Once attached to a belief, they defend it, they protect it, they identify with it. But ideas are tools, not trophies. The purpose of an idea is to help you understand reality. If a better idea appears, replace the old one. That is not weakness, that is growth. Learning is not about building an unchanging collection of answers. It is about developing a better way of asking questions. The quality of your questions often determines the quality of your understanding. A shallow question produces a shallow answer. A deep question opens new worlds. Why does this happen? What evidence supports this? What assumptions am I making? What would prove me wrong? Questions like these sharpen the mind. They force clarity. They reveal hidden details. And they prevent complacency. Perhaps the most important lesson of all is that understanding is available to far more people than they imagine. The barrier is rarely intelligence. More often, it is impatience. People want conclusions before exploration, answers before questions, certainty before investigation. But understanding takes time. It requires wrestling with ideas. It requires confusion. It requires mistakes. It requires curiosity. There is no shortcut around these things. Yet there is good news. Every person can improve at them. You do not need a special brain. You do not need extraordinary talent. You need honesty. You need curiosity. You need persistence. And you need the courage to admit when something does not make sense. Because that moment when you admit you do not understand is not a failure. It is the beginning. The world is full of astonishing things. Atoms, stars, life, consciousness, mathematics, language, society. Every one of these subjects contains mysteries deep enough to occupy a lifetime. The goal is not to know everything. No one can. The goal is to develop a way of thinking that allows you to move steadily closer to understanding. A way of thinking that values truth over appearance, clarity over jargon, questions over assumptions, reality over reputation. When you learn in that way, something remarkable happens. Subjects become less intimidating. Complex ideas become approachable. Confusion becomes useful. And knowledge transforms from a collection of facts into a living structure of understanding. That is the real secret. Not a trick, not a shortcut, not a talent reserved for a chosen few. Just a disciplined commitment to curiosity, clarity, honesty, and relentless questioning. The people who understand what others don't are rarely the ones who memorize the most. They are usually the ones who never stop asking simple questions, never stop testing their ideas against reality, and never stop searching for deeper explanations. And that is a skill available to anyone willing to practice it. Now, there is another fascinating thing about learning that most people overlook. We often imagine that understanding arrives all at once, like a light switch turning on in a dark room. One moment you're confused, and the next moment everything is clear. But real understanding rarely works that way. More often it grows gradually. It is built from layers. At first, an idea looks simple. Then you discover it is more complicated than you thought. Then you become confused. Then you learn more and begin connecting pieces together. Eventually, you reach a deeper understanding than the one you started with. This process can be frustrating because, strangely enough, learning often makes you feel less certain before it makes you feel more certain. Imagine looking at a mountain from far away. It appears simple. You can see the outline clearly. But as you move closer, details emerge. There are ridges, valleys, rocks, trees, and shadows. The mountain becomes more complicated. Knowledge works the same way. From a distance, many subjects seem easy. Then you study them seriously and discover layers of complexity. Many people mistake this stage for failure. It is not failure, it is progress. You are finally seeing reality instead of a simplified picture. And reality is usually more interesting than the picture. One of the most useful habits you can develop is learning to enjoy not knowing. That sounds strange, because most of us spend our lives trying to eliminate uncertainty. We want answers, we want certainty, we want closure. But uncertainty is where discovery lives. If everything were already known, there would be nothing left to learn. Think about explorers crossing oceans centuries ago. They sailed into regions that had not been mapped. There were risks. There were unknowns. There were questions without answers. Learning is very similar. Every new subject contains unexplored territory. The willingness to enter that territory is what separates passive learners from active ones. Passive learners want information delivered. Active learners go hunting for it. And hunting changes the experience completely. When you discover an answer yourself, it becomes part of you. You remember it differently. You value it differently. You understand it differently. That is why solving a problem yourself is often more educational than being shown the solution immediately. The struggle matters, not because struggle is enjoyable, but because it forces your mind to engage. If someone lifts every weight for you, your muscles do not grow. If someone solves every problem for you, your understanding does not grow. The effort itself is part of the learning process. Another interesting observation is that many people study answers while ignoring questions. They collect conclusions without understanding how those conclusions were reached. But the path to an answer is often more valuable than the answer itself. Suppose someone tells you that a particular scientific principle is true. You can memorize it, you can repeat it, you can even pass an exam on it. But if you don't understand how people discovered it, why they believed it, what evidence supported it, and what alternatives were considered, then your understanding remains shallow. Knowledge gains strength when you understand its foundations. Otherwise, it rests on trust alone. Trust has its place, of course. No one can personally verify every fact in existence. But whenever possible, it is worth asking how we know what we know. That question has extraordinary power. How do we know the earth moves around the sun? How do we know atoms exist? How do we know diseases are caused by microorganisms? How do we know distant stars are made of the same elements found on Earth? Every one of these answers involves evidence, observation, testing, and reasoning. Understanding grows when you examine the chain connecting claim to evidence. Without that chain, facts become isolated statements. With that chain, they become meaningful. There is also a tendency among people to seek certainty where certainty does not exist. Reality is often messier than we would like. Many questions have incomplete answers. Many theories explain some things well and other things poorly. Many conclusions contain degrees of confidence rather than absolute guarantees. This can make people uncomfortable, but accepting uncertainty is part of intellectual maturity. A person who pretends to know everything learns very little. A person who acknowledges uncertainty remains capable of discovery. There is tremendous strength in being able to say, I don't know. Those three words are often treated as a weakness. In truth, they are among the most powerful words in learning, because once you admit you don't know, you become free to investigate. Pretending to know creates a wall. Admitting ignorance creates a door. And every major advance in understanding begins with someone stepping through that door. It is remarkable how often breakthroughs emerge from simple observations. People sometimes imagine that important discoveries come only from complicated mathematics or advanced technology. But many discoveries begin with noticing something that everyone else ignored. An apple falls. A compass points north. Water climbs a thin tube. A shadow moves across the ground. The event itself may appear ordinary. What matters is the question that follows. Why? That single word has driven countless discoveries. Why does this happen? Why does it happen this way and not another way? Why does nature behave as it does? Curiosity transforms ordinary experiences into opportunities for understanding. Without curiosity, even extraordinary events can be overlooked. With curiosity, ordinary events become extraordinary. And perhaps this is one of the most important differences between superficial learning and deep learning. Superficial learning focuses on information. Deep learning focuses on understanding. Information answers questions. Understanding generates new ones. The deeper you go into any subject, the more fascinating it becomes. A simple question about light becomes a journey into quantum mechanics. A question about motion becomes a journey into space and time. A question about life becomes a journey into chemistry, genetics, and evolution. Knowledge is not a collection of separate islands. It is a connected landscape. Every path eventually leads to another path. Every answer reveals another mystery. Every discovery opens another door. And the most exciting part is that this process never really ends. The more you learn, the more you realize how much remains unexplored. Far from being discouraging, this should be inspiring. It means the universe remains full of opportunities for wonder. There are always new questions to ask, always deeper explanations to uncover, always assumptions to challenge, always patterns waiting to be recognized. And the ability to participate in that exploration does not belong exclusively to experts, professors, or researchers. It belongs to anyone willing to observe carefully, think honestly, and remain curious long enough to follow a question wherever it leads. Because understanding is not a destination that a person reaches once and for all. It is an ongoing activity, a way of interacting with reality, a habit of mind that refuses to settle for appearances when deeper explanations are possible. And once that habit develops, something interesting begins to happen. You stop looking at the world as a collection of disconnected facts. You start seeing systems, connections, patterns, causes and effects. You begin noticing that many different subjects share common principles. The same logic that helps explain a physical system may help explain an economic system. The same patterns found in nature may appear in human behavior. The same principles of feedback, balance, growth, and adaptation emerge again and again in different forms. The world becomes less fragmented and more unified. And that transformation does not come from memorizing more information. It comes from learning how to think about information. So if there is one idea I hope you remember after all of this, it is this. Understanding is not a gift reserved for a handful of extraordinary people. It is a process, a discipline, a way of thinking. The people who seem to understand more than everyone else are not necessarily the ones with the highest IQs. They are often the ones who refuse to fool themselves, who are willing to admit when they don't know something, and who keep asking simple questions long after everyone else has stopped. The world is full of people who can repeat information. Far fewer can explain it. Far fewer can connect it. And far fewer can look at a complicated idea, strip away the jargon, and see what is really going on underneath. That ability is not magic. It is built one question at a time, one mistake at a time, and one honest investigation at a time. So the next time you encounter something difficult, don't ask yourself, am I smart enough to understand this? Ask yourself a better question. Am I curious enough to keep going? Because understanding does not belong to the fastest learner, the most educated person, or the one with the best memory. It belongs to the person who stays with the question. Never be satisfied with knowing the name of something. Seek to understand how it works. Never be afraid to say, I don't know. That sentence is not the end of knowledge, it is the beginning of it. And never stop testing your ideas against reality, because reality is the greatest teacher any of us will ever have. If you learn to think this way, the world changes. Ordinary things become fascinating. Difficult subjects become approachable. Questions become adventures. And learning stops being something you do to pass a test and becomes something you do to understand the universe itself. And perhaps that is the most remarkable secret of all. The door to deeper understanding has never been locked. Most people simply stop knocking.